Hey guys, welcome back to another, well, I guess it's not a game of CEDH, but a podcast. We figured with what happened with the recent bannings that both me and one of my friends, Sly Fox, decided that we wanted to just share our thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. If you guys don't know, my name is Sly Fox or Gabriel, however you know me best. I am mainly a Derevi pilot as well as a Tasker pilot, but in addition to those, I have about 6 or 7 other CEDH decks on me and available most of the time. And boy, was Monday just quite the change. I'm already in the middle of switching up my decks.
I say, yeah, and I have to imagine you'll be updating most of your decks, including your Lion's Eye Diamond winning Derevi list.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Funny enough, I that list was pre-Nadu, not optimized. That was before I even like went into the server. It was only till after I won that LED that I realized I really should be running Nomads and Core. But yeah, big changes.
But I guess in case some people are just clicking on this randomly, or maybe just living under a rock. So what cards were banned? It was Nadu, Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, and Dockside. So some pretty big cards in our format of CEDH. I guess since you already mentioned Nadu, we'll start off with that. So as a Derevi pilot, losing that had to be a hurt.
Yeah, I think losing Nadu was a big blow for really more than Nadu players in Derevi. Derevi's always been a really solid deck without Bird number 2. But my personal opinion is that Nadu and Nomads and Core for our deck was our way to keep up with ad nauseum level draw. I'm really sad to see the Bird go. When I was reading a lot of the discussion as to why they wanted to ban Nadu, mainly the part where the combos are non-deterministic and they take a long time. I didn't see that as much in cEDH. I'm sure maybe it did happen in casual a lot more. Maybe it's some confirmation bias on my end, but in many of the tournaments I played where I was at a Nadu table, they were pretty quick about going about their day, and I didn't see many decks jamming it in the 99 other than Derevi for sure and maybe Hymna and Thrasios, which we will get to later.
Yeah, I laughed because I have kind of the opposite confirmation bias where when I played it, granted I was playing an earlier list when it just come out, going off on that, it very much harkened back to kind of the Paradox Engine format that originally banned cards like that, where it's just I'm doing a lot of game actions. My friends are just kind of sitting there at the table waiting for me to like probably win the game, but you never know. I can definitely see at least why it was banned in a casual sense, because that card kind of blows when it goes off, but doesn't just have a clear win.
Yeah, it's really difficult to like place Nadu in Commander because I think like at the high power tables with a lot of interaction, it's a lot easier to deal with him. You can counter him, you can remove him and give him at least one card. There's at least a lot of things you can do, but in a casual game where people really like the goldfish, I think Nadu goldfish is the hardest out of any card I've seen. So
Probably.
yeah, it's unlikely he will get unbanned unless a large change happens to the format or at least how the players think about the game.
What were your thoughts on Wizards put out what Nadu originally was supposed to be, where it was just supposed to be this kind of flash enabler? What were your thoughts on that version of Nadu? Do you think that one would have been banned?
No, I don't think the other one would have been banned. I think giving creatures flash for 3 mana and then like having like this minor Leovold-esque effect would have been okay. I don't know if I would have played it. It's really cute giving my creatures flash, and I think it maybe would have been like the opposite of Valley Floodcaller actually. But in terms of like power level, I don't think it's nearly to the degree of Nadu because the point is that he's abusable by the player using him. That old version, if people didn't read it, said like creature spells you cast have flash, and whenever an opponent targets one of your things, you do the Nadu effect. Much more limited situations where you could actually gain access to card draw or lands being put on the battlefield.
Speaking about Nadu specifically, was the harken back to the old days is banned as commander. Do you think that, because you said Nadu's basically not being picked up except by Derevi and maybe like one other list. I think it would be fine if we just had it as a banned as commander card, correct?
Oh, I agree 100%. I would love to see maybe just Nadu banned as a commander. If it's in the 99, you can't guarantee that you're going to have it all the time. I didn't think many lists were jamming it. Supposedly in like the ban announcement post, they were presenting this theoretical player who comes to a table, uses Nadu in their 99 with just like a lightning greaves, and it's enough. And I mean, it is enough, but I just don't know many people who were doing that without a discussion first. Banning Nadu as a commander would have been the way to go. It's really unfortunate that we've moved on from banned as a commander overall because of its quote unquote complications that it adds to the format. I can't see banned as a commander being any more complicated than
the day and night cycle, the monarch.
day and night mechanic, monarch initiative, which is just monarch with extra steps, with my favorite, dungeons. Venture into the dungeons, just another mini game on its own. None of this is easier than just reading the text on a website saying can't use as commander, can play in your 99 other cards.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Nadu was a pipe dream. I was really excited to keep using him, but you know, I think my list will be fine without him. A lot of the Derevi players in the Discord have accepted the fact that he's gone, and honestly, it's probably for the better for our decks to just not be jamming Nadu and Nomads in core anytime we really feel like we need.
Yeah, out of all the vitriol or strong opinions that came out of this announcement, I think overall most people are fine with Nadu being banned, and no one, well, it came certainly as a shock that it got banned so suddenly. People are also like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. No one liked his bird to start.
Nadu and Dockside are the two bans I was very okay with on this ban list.
Although, let's get on to some of the more controversial bans. Let's start Jeweled Lotus.
Oh boy.
At least in my opinion, I like that Jeweled Lotus got banned. I think that card, I mean, it's awesome, but it sucks. And the starts that you get with a Jeweled Lotus are just so incredibly powerful that I'm happy to see it gone.
For me, I kind of sit on the other side of the spectrum. I have a couple problems with Jeweled Lotus being banned. First, from just like a objective card perspective, like Jeweled Lotus was made for Commander. It was pushed in products. It's been reprinted. Its abusability is nigh minimum because its mana is only used for Commanders.
Hey, it's played in Legacy, not by a lot, but it's played in Legacy.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's another Cheerio for the Legacy players to eat up. But
well, there was a deck running around that was using Doubling Cube, because you can double the mana, and the mana it doubles doesn't get that restriction. Yeah,
that's okay. That is really funny. However, I mean, I think my thing with Jeweled Lotus is that it wasn't being used in every deck. It was being jammed in decks with mainly either single pip commanders. I mean, I don't even know how to quite go about this.
See, I think you're wrong. I think it was played in basically every single deck. I think 95% of the decks ran Jeweled Lotus. Because even if you don't necessarily, like, it was run in Dihada as just a 2, like, if that was a 4 mana 3 pipped person, I'm pretty sure it was running basically everything but like Animar and maybe Rogsai.
I think all the a lot of the partner lists that weren't Tymna related probably didn't use Jeweled Lotus. I didn't see a single Thrasios non-Tymna list that used Jeweled Lotus. But I think inherently it wasn't used in decks that were like just 2 pips or just 3 pips. I don't Derevi didn't use it because what is Jeweled Lotus gonna offer me except for 1 mana out of the 3 it produces?
Well, that and you're not casting it either.
I think Keenan wasn't using it. Yeah. There was a lot of like decks that didn't use it, but my big hurt with Jeweled Lotus, I mean, it was helping like the fast commanders a lot, but I like that it helped a lot of the slower commanders, a lot of the larger cost commanders get out and compete with, I guess, what the fast meta was at the time. A lot of the 5 mana commanders and upward have been hurt by Jewel Lotus going. I was really happy to start building Elsha, and when all these bans came out, I realized how much more difficult that was going to be. So I think it's a little unfortunate to see it go, but I mean, I get that people don't like seeing Atraxa get played turn 2 or 3. That's completely reasonable, but I think the principle of Jewel Lotus existing is the reason why I'm kind of sad to see it banned. Not even from a financial perspective. If you're gonna make a card and design a card and have it come out and be used for the purpose of one format and then ban it in that format, it's just very troublesome.
I mean, I think that that certainly people have been screaming that from the high heavens for a while now, that Wizards printing these very powerful built for commander cards. We're getting what, like 16 new commander decks a year or something like that. I think that's indicative of something else rather than this specific issue of the bannings, though.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have been talking about product fatigue, specifically this year. There's been so much that's come out. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Magic and I love seeing the new ideas that they use, but my wallet can only handle so much.
I guess speaking of powerful yet old cards, we'll move on to Mana Crypt. So this is actually one that I am sad to see go. Just like how Sol Ring was iconic of the format, it felt to me like Mana Crypt was also one of those kind of pillars of, I mean, granted, it was also like the poster child of why people don't want to play cEDH, but to me, it was like, this is the iconic card of cEDH. I have, like, all my business cards were Mana Crypts. I've switched over to Sol Ring now, but to us, at least to me, that's what Mana Crypt was to the format.
I agree. I think Mana Crypt was like the Jewel Lotus of, or not Jewel Lotus, sorry, the Sol Ring of cEDH. And I think a lot of people didn't like getting into cEDH because they felt the need to go ahead and like get a Mana Crypt. But I mean, part of my problem with that is that cEDH is pretty widely known as a very proxy friendly format. So if you've proxied a Mana Crypt, no one's like batting an eye at you. It's pretty common, especially with how old the card is and how its reprints have been mainly in premium product. But Crypt is one of those cards that is so powerful, but it creates a lot of explosive hand variants for your opener.
So,
I liked Crypt a lot, so I'm also sad to see it go.
Okay, I was about to say, so are you like for, or you were against Jewel Lotus being banned, but you were for Mana Crypt? I thought you were about to say.
No. I love Mana Crypt. I had it in all my decks. It helped me consistently get those larger mana cost commanders that have like a little more colorless to them on the field. Elsha was looking good. Marnius was looking good. Elevere, Slicer, a lot of the monocolor commanders were pretty happy with this, as well as Urza.
Speaking of which, Mana Crypt, at least before the bannings, was not a cheap card. Actually, I mean, to be fair, everything but Nadu wasn't a cheap card. What are your thoughts on, I guess, because we just said that cEDH is a very proxy-friendly format. What are your thoughts on them banning hundreds of dollars worth of cards?
Oh man, I mean, I know there's a large controversy going around online about how a lot of these cards, they got like sold off. There was like a big sales tip that happened because Wizards always knows about kind of the plan about 6-ish months before, give or take. There's some trending data about the cards being sold, and then afterwards they got banned and all the prices tanked. So I feel for the people who go ahead and had bought them like the week before. I know my father went ahead and bought a Dockside and only got to play with it for a week.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know that was really tough. But I would say the value isn't lost until you get rid of the card. This is a good time to go ahead and maybe, I'm not endorsing spending money, but if you are interested in getting these cards for the sake of maybe a cube or something, this is a good time. You never know if they will or won't get unbanned. I've been sitting on all these cards since their release, except for Mana Crypt. I got that back in E-Masters. I told myself I'd never get rid of them, and even after the bans and the lost value, there's no point in getting rid of them.
No, I definitely agree. Unless you need to pay your bills and you're just offloading. I would say sit on the cards. I laugh because I own one of everything basically. My dockside was from the original printing back in the Commander deck, and I still have it sleeved up in the Edgar Markov precon deck that it was printed in, and I've proxied it everywhere since. The one card I never bought was Jewel Lotus, just because it was always expensive and I kept trying to pull it. But I'm very much debating now picking up hopefully a cheaper copy and just having one just in case, because they do make very pretty arts, especially like the Mana Crypt arts of that just came out in Ixalan. Like they're still very pretty.
And I mean, it's nice to see that they've gone down. But the accessibility to the format argument that I've seen a few people make around saying, oh, it's good that they've been banned. Now people can spend less money to get into the format. I just don't see that happening. All that's happened after these things got banned was other cards that are in similar veins have gone up in price. If you have a Mana Vault, great on you guys. You went from having a $45 card to having almost a $100 card immediately. People just find ways to go ahead and use what is the best they can for their deck. That's just going to be an inherent part of cEDH, and now more people need Mana Vault. You know, there's larger demand for it, so its price is just going to keep going up for a while.
And as we said, cEDH is a proxy-friendly format. Try it before you buy it. That's the age-old expression.
With Mana Crypt and Jewel Lotus, I do want to say, I think my biggest contention with them being banned over the other two is that my philosophy on bannings is that I don't like cards that are inaccessible to other decks. And so colorless cards, you can play them in any deck. Mind you, maybe Jewel Lotus isn't the most useful in some decks.
I'm still fighting you on that one.
Yeah, Nadu and Dockside are cards that gave decks of those colors like an inherent advantage. It's like not having black and you can't play ad nauseum. That's one of those cards where it's so powerful in its color that sometimes people will go ahead and splash the color just to play it, along with many other good reasons to play black.
One of the issues though is right now cEDH very much is a 4 and 5 color soup kind of strategy. Well, yes, technically colors can go in anything. A lot of the big decks are multicolors anyway, so it's not like these monocolor cards aren't kind of just basically colorless to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 4-color soup is the result of kind of some decks needing access to certain cards. Mana Crypt and like the more 4-color soupy the format gets, the more Mana Crypt has some like just dead turns where, I mean, it's great when you like play land Mana Crypt Rhystic Study and you're feeling great about yourself. Like that's turn 1, like ideal. Nothing's beating that unless you know they hit you with a crazy counterspell turn 1. That'd be awesome. But Mana Crypts like Thrasios Timnipile, like Mana Crypt's probably helping pay for like the Thrasios activations, but it's not casting either of those commanders really efficiently. It's just one of those cards that helps your turns go better when you have those like higher cost cards. To me, the 4-color soup is a result of like you're just wanting access to certain cards. I'm sure Roxai loves playing red because it needs Breach. It had Dockside. Everyone has a direction for why they want red, why they want a certain color, why they want a certain card. I think that's a good reason why we should start talking about Dockside right now.
Yeah.
This is the card that made people play red for a very long time.
So I am very happy Dockside is gone, although probably for the worst kind of reason, because now I can just be sloppy and cast all my artifacts and all my enchantments and not have to worry about it. Granted, I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. I don't think that's a great idea for the format, because I think that kind of interplay of holding my rocks against Dockside while also having to play against like Rhystic Studies and stuff like that is an interesting play pattern, and I think makes it better. But as a player, I'm like, oh yes, now I can just dump my hand turn 1 and not have any regrets.
Yeah, Dockside really is just that format warping of a card. I mean, as someone who also just loves to kind of dump the hand and go crazy, I'm sure both my Tasigur and my Derevi deck, these were wins in our books. We're definitely the slowest of the 3-color wedges. all these cards being banned was at least better for us if there's a theoretical slower format. But specifically with Dockside, I know that's been hindering a lot of decks from just being able to normally play the game. I've wanted to play Shorekai for a really long time, but really can't because Dockside just pose that deck. Almost everything's an artifact. My deck is full of cards that are just going to feed the Dockside by itself, let alone with other people at the table.
No, I completely understand. I think it was hurting a lot of stax-based decks as well that like their Blood Moons, that like a bunch of different hate pieces that just feed the Dockside, and unfortunately are just like giving free wins to the Dockside player.
The sit and do nothing cards were just not enough sometimes with Dockside. Not to mention, people played multiple clones in their deck for Dockside. People would Praetor's Grasp each other for Docksides. I am off Dauntless Dismantler now, but that was a big like Dockside breaker. Other than Blind Obedience, like that was like one of my go-tos. So I see a lot of people are starting to slot that out again. Like Nature's Healing, guys. I promise you. It's been a couple days. I know initially on Monday I was really upset about this, but come, we're about 5 days later, I'm coming to terms with what's happening. Dockside was, though, one of those big reasons to play red, and I've heard some say, well, that's probably not a good thing if it's the, major reason people play red. But at the same time, other than Breach, if there's no other reason to play red, I just see it as something that might homogenize the format more. We're gonna get 4-color suit piles that aren't red.
I'm very sad because I mean, granted, Dockside was a busted card. I hate that how much it hurts Gruul decks specifically. Like I liked Dockside in those kind of low colored decks that, like, yes, you can abuse it, but you're gaining this bonus of playing Dockside in the 2-color decks, but you're also losing out on being a 4-color soup. But unfortunately, you can't say Dockside is only in red green and not allowed to be played in other colors.
It's sad. The low color decks got hurt more than actually the high color decks, despite the high color decks being more broken. I'm in the Gruul Chord, and I know a lot of those decks were pretty hurt, especially Atali. Atali was the big like loss.
Mm-hmm. Although you're saying that Roxanne is now the truth. Is that the truth?
Oh yes, I am 100% believer of Roxanne being the new wave. If you are Gruul, please heed my words. It's still a food chain commander. It's cheaper and more reliable to cast if we're getting more dorks on board. You can still ritual into it pretty consistently without Jeweled or Crypt or Dockside. And if people start playing these mid-range slugfests, especially with Tymna at the helm, Keenan Piles, and Rogsai, as well as maybe a few other commanders, are just going to be sitting at the top for a little while until things shake out. But Roxanne's Meteors, they shoot them all. And I think that's going to be really good for the mid-range slugfest.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of doing well, so what are your I guess overall thoughts of the meta, and what are the winners and losers?
Oh man. Winners, definitely Tymna Thrasios back on the menu. I know I'm in the Thrasios partner chord. They made like a huge announcement basically being like, guys, we are sans red now. No more red. And I agree. It was so hard to like justify playing Thrasios red pile when I don't have Dockside to abuse. Chthonian Nightmare feels like a way worse card too. So
I'm so sad. That card looked so cool, and we got to play for it like what, 2 months or something like that.
Yeah, I remember talking with you and the rest of the group chat about it in during spoiler season. I was so hype, and it is just gone. Now it's like for probably fringe decks that use like Priest of Gix and stuff. But yeah, Tymna Thrasios is up. I think Rogsai does not care. I mean, the Dockside was a big explosive hit, but I mean, Mana Crypts was kind of whatever for them. They're still doing what they do best, which is playing Rograk and then calling the Weaking It and having Adnos turn 1 or 2. I think some of the slower decks are gonna be fine again. Like I said, Bant and Sultai were the slower 3-color wedges, and both of those discords that I'm part of seem to be really happy about what's going on.
I'm happy that I think Adnos is going to be, a lot of decks are going to be off Adnos except for Rogsai specifically, because getting to that 5 color or 5 mana requirement without Mana Crypt or Dockside is definitely a lot tougher. And post Naws, you lost 2 of your best enablers, so I'm not sad to see less ad Naws in the format as well.
Yeah, I think Food Chain and Polyceptor decks are going to be the big new wave for quite a couple reasons. Like Food Chain is just a really good card on its own, but I think people are going to want to pivot to it is just another one of those like I play it with the other card and probably win the game. This is like the green partial equivalent to Thassa's Oracle consultation. Definitely all the Dimir decks are feeling really good about themselves right now. They dodged quite the bullet. So the Esper shells look great, which is wonderful. I like a lot of the Esper control shells. Tivit and Atraxa, despite being hurt by Jeweled Lotus, are, I think, doing fine anyway. They just have to adjust their game plan. I've seen a lot of those players say, yeah, the deck still works, just like don't jam the commander.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which,
I can see that.
in my opinion, I think jamming, like either Tivit or Atraxa, jamming your commander is like the worst thing to be doing in that deck. So I think it'll let players keep better hands so that way they're not tempted to be like, I got to turn 2 Atraxa, or I got to turn 2 Tivit. Woohoo!
Yeah, big losers are definitely going to be Sisay, Kenrith. A lot of those, like Atali got hit really hard. Pour one out for Dargo players too, guys.
Yeah, I think Dargo is probably the worst hit out of most of the popular decks. Sisay got powered down to probably tier 2. Najeela, I think, went neutral on it. I know one of our friends, Fernando, was talking about how a lot of the people, again, are off Adnaz. They're back on, like, Fire Covenant. And I think overall, even though Najeela was one of the best Jeweled Lotus commanders, they're still playing so many dorks that turn 2 Najeela is still fine.
Yeah, like, I don't think Najeela actually cared too much. That's just 2 more, like, utility slots they get to use.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad for the Dargo players, especially because I like Dargo a lot. I think Dargo was like the cooler red partner.
Mm-hmm.
I hate seeing Rogrek. That's one of those like maybe could have been banned cards because a 0 mana commander has terrible implications and time see it again. I recently was up in Vermont for a tournament for a Mox Diamond, and I kid you not, there were like 5 Keenan players, 4 Rog size, 4 blue farm decks. Nature was not healing up there. I was very sad. Every table I played at, there was at least 1 Keenan player, and the Keenan player that won my game 2 went ahead and won the tournament. So I mean, good on him. But I'm afraid that deck's unfortunately getting better now that they don't have to worry about docksides getting jammed.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean, overall, I think Kinnan was probably the best served by these bans. But I guess switching gears a little bit. So with all these talks on bans and whatnot, I guess the topic came up, should CEDH now be its own format? Because, I mean, for the longest time, and it's still true, CEDH is still just EDH at the most powerful level. But now with people getting kind of hurt from these bannings, people are calling for just its own format for basically tEDH.
I think I've always been a proponent of tEDH. I'm a little bit of a separationist when it comes to this conversation because ultimately the way that normal EDH and even theoretical high power EDH or kitchen table EDH play are all extremely different from the cEDH format. I mean, you're talking about format where you can actually predict what decks are going to do because there's so many staples. I think part of the problem for a lot of people with tEDH being a format really comes down to how players like discuss with each other. It's all like there's so many layers to it. I know Rule 0 is a big part of the problem where people want things to be unbanned, so they'll unban them at the kitchen table, and that's what the RC wants. But to me, it feels like it's easier to just ban things when you get to a pod and say, oh, I don't want to play against a deck that does this. cEDH is meant to be the best of how the format can be played. That's also creating a divide, you know.
Well, you say exactly that. this is supposed to be the best of the format. And by breaking away from the format, we're not saying that. We're creating our own format, which is still a very high-powered format. But in my eyes, extra restrictions aren't necessarily bad. I think more restrictions makes for more interesting gameplay. I don't know if you've ever watched like a no ban list commander game where the games take like 3 turns. Everyone is like trying to like play Flash as like the premier win con or Time Vault and stuff like that. As much as those games sound fun in concept, I realize that the diversity of those more powerful decks are way lessened than, say, EDH as it's now, where more restrictions means more diversity, in my opinion. Assuming that they don't say, all right, we're just like banning the color red or something like that.
I mean, if they ban Underworld Breach, they might as well say that, right?
That you're not wrong. I mean, Magda will still see play. I will say that Magda will still see play if they ban Underworld Breach.
Right. Yeah, Magda players are actually also feeling really good about these bans, despite Crypt and Lotus and Dockside being probably played in some of their lists. cEDH being its own format, it's a tough argument on probably my end nowadays, because I think people are starting to come to realize that, change happens. This is where things have landed, and we just kind of have to make up for it. My fun in cEDH definitely comes from how fast things are. Some of the mind game when it comes from like mulliganing with those opening hands, like, who's in seat 1 right now? What do I have to worry about? Like, what is like the major thing that's going to be a problem in terms of how fast the format is now compared to pre-ban? The difference is really like turn 1 wins to turn 2 wins for the turbo decks. It's still really strong against mid-range decks that don't keep at least one piece of interaction in their opener. I mean, cEDH, I'll love it to the end, no matter what ends up happening. I'm sure it's going to be difficult to kind of swallow the Monday pill right now.
Yeah, I think for me, my reason I want cEDH to stay in EDH, partially for like a cowardly reason. So EDH is so much larger than cEDH, even with cEDH being very vocal about their thoughts and opinions. Because I look and Game Nights gets 500,000 to 1 million views every one of their videos. None of the cEDH channels are doing that. In terms of popularity, EDH is a much larger format, and I like that with the power creep that Wizards is putting out, we just instinctively get more players that just kind of casually build a cEDH deck just by getting the newest cards. And slowly over time, we get a lot of new players that way. I'm really worried that by making ourselves a new format, we cut off that lifeline. Of course, we'll still get some players that are like, oh, I built this really high-powered deck, and now I want to bring it to a tournament because there are just people that love grinding tournaments, and they'll join our format that way. However, when has a format that wanted to be EDH but wasn't EDH succeeded? Wizards have tried Conquest, they've tried Tiny Leaders, they've tried X, Y, and Z, and none of those had the staying power that EDH had, simply because a new format, new rules, you're not going to get players that already have their deck to join, because players are lazy. I'm not going to lie. One of our friends is a huge proponent of Conquest and has been trying to get us to play since the start. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to build a new deck. I don't want to have to worry about different rules and different bannings and stuff like that. I like having our format, having everyone play by the same rules. And even though cEDH has like a different rule 0, we're still playing EDH.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're wrong. Part of my thing, right, is that these bans only affect TEDH players anyway. Anyone who enters a tournament, this is where these bans really like affect people, because a lot of the adversity online between like the cEDH community and the non-cEDH, like the normal EDH community, is that people are saying, oh, we'll just, rule 0 it, in your group. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But the people who are going to tournaments are usually cEDH players. It's hard for me to really concede that cEDH is still a minority within the community. even though it really is, when there are tournaments being set out for it, we're getting, 1Ks, 3Ks, 5Ks. I'm pretty sure there's like a 10K coming up in January. It's hard to say that this format hasn't grown so much that I think it needs to be recognized in some form. Plus, these bans, to me, are very targeted towards cEDH. They present these theoretical players in casual play that are doing these things, but I mean, maybe it's confirmation bias again, but I'd never see this. Or casual players.
I think that is your confirmation bias. So I go to a lot of, I don't go to specifically tournaments to play in said tournaments, but what I do is what I go to is the Magic Cons, and I'll play 12 hours of cEDH, and I will see a wide variety of what people still call cEDH. And I know because my comments will certainly point out when one of the decks doesn't seem to be cEDH. And when I sit down with a player, they're like, yeah, I've brought competitive. I'm here to play to competitive. So I think it's one of those things that we are enfranchised players and we tend to play with other enfranchised players. So we are playing, I won't say tier 1 cEDH, but we're playing probably the best of our cEDH kind of players, where at these tournaments, you'll get a lot of people that will call it cEDH. And as I said, this is one of the issues with mismatch on power levels and stuff like that. Truly are playing some, I guess, interesting cards. There are still, even in cEDH, there are still a wide variety of these kind of players and the decks that they bring.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like if you're entering a tournament, like, and if there's some sort of like prize payout per se, you should be expecting to play against people who want to win and are using the things to win. Which is, I know I went to SCG Hartford, what was it, last year already? Wow, it's been a year almost. And they had specific dedicated events for cEDH and normal EDH, and I believe like the prizing and how they did the points to go ahead and pay people out was different between the two because of how different the philosophy is when people jump into the games or either or. The whole point that there is some sort of separation like that and that events make that separation known to players is good enough reasoning for me to believe that there is some separation already and that maybe having its own format is not the worst option. It's just a matter of right now logistics. Like how are we gonna set up like a cEDH RC? What's staying banned? What's getting unbanned? There's so much that's gonna go into that unfortunately no one's putting in the work for at like that top level. There's a lot of communities who are interested in doing it.
I was about to
I
say
know.
there is the cEDH collective seems to
Yeah.
be at least a good attempt at what players are hoping that would be. I know beforehand with the top deck situation fiasco, it garnered a lot of ill will, as it rightfully should. But at least it does seem like getting the data and doing it. Because one of the things I think for the health of the format, ban lists, as I said, make for interesting gameplay. And I think playing cEDH is with a different ban list or an updated one that's more curated towards cEDH would be more enjoyable. I just very much worry about the longevity that, just like Wizards, we don't want to be shooting ourselves in the foot kind of thing.
Yeah, I get that. These bans, we need more time to let them shake out. Maybe we just need an even further shakeup. I feel like maybe they should have unbanned some cards.
Yeah, I was about to say, so I have now inducted you the cEDH Rules Committee. You have complete control over the ban list. You can make them play upside down with one hand tied behind their back. What are your bans? What are your rules? What are you doing that you think would make the best cEDH format?
Oh man. All right. I think ad nauseam has to go. If people are against Grizzlebrand existing, then ad nauseam should have been gone as well. I'm surprised that it wasn't initially. Banned as commander needs to come back. I think Nadu, Golos, and Grizzlebrand can be banned as commander. Either we're making the argument that Adnos stays and Grizzlebrand gets to be in the 99, or Grizzlebrand is just banned outright and Adnos is banned outright, or we can make Grizzlebrand banned as the commander. Time Vault probably stays banned. A lot of the Power 9, except for Time Twister, maybe stays banned. I don't mind getting back Ancestral Recall.
Are you gonna have the Moxes?
No, Mox has got to stay out. I'm sorry. Mox has got to stay out, but Mana Crypt can stay in. Mana Crypt makes colorless mana. Moxes make colored mana. I just think that's more abusable. Dockside. Now we're back to like what do we do about the cards that just got hit? Dockside is really tough. No, I'll let it sit in banned. I already wasn't playing red while Dockside existed, so I'm probably not going to play red anyway. But I mean, I get there's so many strategies that just loved using him. Primeval Titan's coming back. Leovold banned as commander, but in the 99. Or I mean, I'm okay with him being as a commander. I just know people hate getting Narsetted like really early in the game. It's kind of tough. You get wheeled out immediately.
I mean, I'm all for you banned as commander, kind of.
Yeah, I would say banned as commander for Leovold's probably fine. But if he's in your 99, like you're probably maybe tutoring for him. It's just like having another Narset in your deck, except you have to play 3 colors that even have access to him. So, what else? What else? Oh my gosh, I have to like look at the ban list. Biorhythm, I guess, comes back because like, why was it even banned in the first place? 8 mana.
Coalition Victory, OP.
Coalition Victory. Oh my goodness.
What about, say, another big component is Thassa's and Bowmaster. Those are also heavily debated.
Oh right. Yuck. As a Bant player, get Bowmasters out of here. But when I'm playing Tasigur, I love Bowmasters so much. So, I think Bowmasters can probably stay. It hurts Dork decks, but I feel like a lot of people who've been playing Dorks for a while have kind of adjusted themselves. Ultimately, you know, you can't guarantee you're playing at a table with black. I mean, 4-color soup decks are so common. I don't know, actually. Never mind. Don't quote me on that. But I will say Thassa's is a big contentious point for a lot of people in cEDH. I think there's a okay amount of interaction for it. I mean, when you're at a table with 3 people, unless all of them are playing like non-blue and you're the only blue deck at the table, people are always aware of it. I've never had a table like be pretty blind to the fact that I have 3 mana available, could just jam it if I wanted. But maybe that is part of the problem, is that you can just jam it and the trigger still ends up on the stack. There's only like 3 decks that reliably in the format like play a stifle effect.
That's my big issue. I would say, to me, I would ban Adnaz, I would ban Thassa's Oracle, and I'm on the fence about Bowmasters. I would probably try and ban it for a little while and be like, I want to see how the format shapes out without it. But very similar to yours, that's the kind of format that I would probably want to play in. Although granted, we're banning a bunch of cards that kind of speed up the format.
Oh no, maybe we are the RST already.
I would say this is I guess for this tEDH format, it's a timed tournament. What are your thoughts on the format? Obviously, with just these bans of Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, Dockside is getting slower. Right now, there's a lot of contention on like the point structures and everything like that. Are we worried that we're making the format too slow?
I know many people who like went to the time. I think the conventional timer for a lot of people is 80 minutes. And I know quite a decent part of my games go to time. I am a stax player inherently. My Derevi list is tempo style. I have a little bit of the mid-range turbo element and a little bit of the stacks that I can pivot to. But I also play Elavir and many other stacks decks, and that timer is really my enemy in a game. Other than like the fact that I'm actually playing Arch Enemy, part of the problem is that I have to fast play on my own turns because other people on their turns might slow play if they're representing some version of game actions. And all of that is really eating into the 80-minute timer and probably forcing a draw, which is, you know, there's sometimes where you want to play that way. Maybe it might be time to possibly add like an extra 10 minutes to the timer. I know it's going to make games go on a little longer, but if the format is like 3 turns slower and those are your developing turns where a lot of things could be happening, I could see an extra 10 minutes where it's not a insanely large amount of time. Like 10 minutes in like the mid range, the end game is like nothing. But in the early game, if we want the early game to be slower, give us at least 10 extra minutes.
I guess we are coming up on the hour, so do you have any final thoughts? Anything that you wanted to try out new from the format? Are you excited about anything?
Yeah, I mean, I am excited about Roxanne. The Gruul Cord doesn't actually have a Roxanne channel, so I'm gonna see if I can bring it into light. If the format is as slow as people are theorizing, maybe the 5 mana commanders are okay. I'm not sold on Elsha, but I am going back to Marnius midrange. I think it'll be fine. Grixis Pirates is also something I'm brewing up again. I think Grixis Pirates is doing okay despite Malcolm not being like turn oneable off of the Jeweled Lotus. That's fine. And then yeah, I think the Polyscepter decks are cool. I was originally playing Urza as like my main artifact focused deck. Well, not as a Polyscepter style deck, but now that I think I can play it, and I want to play a card that reliably wins me the game when it's on field. That way I can deal with the 80. I can win through an 80-minute timer with a guaranteed win over just kind of going for it and maybe fizzling. Polysceptering in Shorakai feels a lot more reliable, especially with access to silence effects and other great stacks pieces.
No, I'm hopeful for this new format, or just the new ban list. I'm hoping to see, the one thing that I don't want to see is Rogsai. I'm going to be very mad if the Mind Sculptor's top 10 picks for the month are going to be the exact same top 10 as before the ban list. I think that's the only thing I don't want to see, or at least I'm hoping not to see. Overall, I thought the format did, even if it wasn't stale, it felt stale. So I'm hoping that this shakeup overall breathes new light in the format. And you know what they say, even bad publicity is still good publicity. I'm hoping that people will see that this is a format and hopefully come check it out.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big change for a lot of people, but I encourage everyone to, maybe see the silver linings, give it a chance. We'll see what happens.
But all right, I think we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Gabe, for coming and talking on your thoughts. This was a blast. Hopefully we'll get to do it again soon. Is there anything you wanted to plug or anything like that?
Nah, my social media presence is relatively low. Please subscribe to Dead on Board. Steve is one of my great friends. I enjoy being here. I enjoy helping him. You should support him too.
All right. And I guess we'll just end it how we always do. And remember, never give up, even if you're dead on board. I'll see you guys later.